They want to meet, and they're doing no business right now. And those ships are turning around in the Pacific Ocean. But they want to negotiate, and they want to have a meeting, and we'll be meeting with them at the right time. Look, they're suffering greatly. Their economy is suffering greatly because they're not doing trade with the U.S.
Just weeks after President Trump slapped Beijing with a punishing 145% tariff, China is blinking. In a stunning reversal, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer will now meet face-to-face with Chinese leadership in Switzerland, marking the first high-level talks since the tariff blitz began.
The world has been coming to the U.S., and China has been the missing piece. We have shared interest that this isn't sustainable, as I said before, especially on the Chinese side. And, 145%, 125% is the equivalent of an embargo. We don't want to decouple. What we want is fair trade.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Taylor Riggs, and joining me are my co-hosts, Dagan McDowell, Brian Brenberg, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for the hour, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, this is the clearest sign yet that Trump's economic pressure campaign is working. While critics called the tariffs reckless, Beijing's sudden willingness to talk says otherwise. Reports are now showing protests from furious factory workers are spreading throughout the communist country, and at least 16 million jobs could be at risk, all according to Goldman Sachs. Meanwhile, Wall Street at least starting to appreciate some of that news. The S&P 500 back firmly in the green, up 0.2%. Jason, let me come to you on this, because I think what Scott Bessent said that I really liked is, it's not really a matter of who blinks first, but again, the pressure is unsustainable, and you're starting to see that within some signs of Chinese economic data, which I know some people say, can you really trust it? Can you not? But you're starting to hear reports that indeed there was enough pressure exerted that they're willing to come to the table. Yeah,
China's position that they weren't going to come and negotiate was kind of a silly non-starter. We all knew it was going to happen. Look, this is a meeting to have a meeting about setting up the next meeting, but it's still good that they meet. And look, we'll probably have a pope before we have a China trade deal, but nevertheless, I think it's healthy. And I am so impressed with Secretary of the Treasury Bessent. He is just fabulous, and it will be a solid representative in these types of discussions. But it's a good starting point, long ways to go. Lots to work out, but things that aren't always trade, like fentanyl and other things that are also part of the deal.
I don't want to front run my Pope segment, Jackie, but you were sitting here when I was reading a statistic that said in the 18th century, it took us 3 years to find a new Pope. Let's hope it doesn't take that long to do a China trade deal, right? Hopefully maybe a couple months or so. Jackie, talking about Scott Bessent in a hearing this morning, he was pressed to give specifics on individual countries that he was in negotiations with. And he did say it's going to be detrimental to the U.S. if I start to name specifics, but confirmed that there were 18 trading partners, and we are moving forward with deliberate speed with all of them. Some of them are quite advanced, and we believe that we have agreements in principle and paper. We'll paper over them in the coming months, but reiterated China's not one of those, that the beginning talks is not what advanced talks are.
Absolutely, and the China talks are going to take a long time, and we already know that. What I think is great about Scott Bessent, to your point, Jason, and to yours, Taylor, is that he doesn't front run the president, right? Howard Lutnick kind of did that on another network. I believe it was last week or possibly the week before. I'm losing track of trade time here. But having said that, Bessent is the guy to do these deals with China specifically, because when you're dealing with the Chinese Communist Party, you're not dealing with people that think and act the way we do. He's measured. He's smart. He knows his stuff. He knows how to talk to people. He's not brash. I think that's really important when you sit down with their trade representatives. And I think Greer is also skilled. Basically, I'm saying it shouldn't be Howard Lutnick and it shouldn't be Peter Navarro, which it's clearly not. When it comes to the United States, though, we assumed that they were going to come to the table. As a bloc, the EU takes the most of China's exports, but we're right there, right under them. And so they can't ignore us. And we represent a significant portion of their economy. I talked about, at a different point, the kinds of problems that China is facing internally with not only the structure of the economy, but also their property declines, all the things that coincidentally led up to the unleashing of COVID. It's a separate conversation. But all the problems that they were having are still there, and they still are under the surface. So this is an economy right now that's chugging along that can't be without the United States, and therefore they are coming to the table. I think, as I said, that Besson is the perfect person to lead this. He won't front run the president. I think the president will be behind the scenes, and he is very much in charge of what's happening with China. But I actually think this is progressing pretty nicely with respect to how it could have gone.
Well, and we got more economic data from China out overnight. Dagan, it was interesting. China's central bank is responding to these tariffs, saying that they're cutting interest rates and injecting more liquidity into their financial system. They're lowering their reserve ratio requirement, which determines how much those banks have to hold in reserves. They're trying to release about 1 trillion yuan, that's equivalent to about $140 billion in liquidity, back into the financial system to allow the banks to lend more. So if you're at least an economist, you're sort of looking at this and thinking, okay, so you have a central bank in China that's reacting to a slowdown and starting to cut in anticipation of this.
Right. We've talked a lot about China and the pain there, but there's pain here in the United States that is being felt by small businesses. And these are businesses that were built over decades. And these are smaller businesses, individuals who do not have the number to the bat phone at the White House, like, say, Tim Cook at Apple. And I got an email like several days ago because these individuals feel like that they are shouting into the wilderness about the pain that they're experiencing. And I'll just read part of it. After working 5 decades in wholesale apparel as a small business owner and a supplier of major mass market retailers, in all my years in wholesale, I cannot recall a more perilous time for suppliers. It is impossible for companies, large or small, to operate under chaotic uncertainty. I voted for President Trump and still believe in his policies and what the administration is trying to accomplish. However, it is baffling to me as a small business owner that this administration stresses short-term pain when implementing a 145% tariff on China. China is most suppliers' #1, and in some cases only source for goods, which this implementation of tariffs will result in permanent pain and high probability of immediate business closures and mass layoffs. Please name one company, no matter their size, that can move production to the U.S. or any other country immediately. In our industry, we rely on the quality and pricing we have worked on by setting up operations and partnerships with our overseas suppliers, including many in China, over years. Moving to other countries at this juncture is not feasible. There is no clarity on what those tariffs for other countries will even be come July. There is no production space available. And he goes on to talk, retailers will not be receiving their orders that they placed months ago, leaving Q3, Q4 goods at risk. Even if suppliers absorbed most of the tariff increase, which overseas suppliers were willing to partner in absorbing a lot of the cost, no one, repeat, no one can operate at a 100% tariff. Some people will get a bailout. The farmers will. Their goods exports have been cut off, not these people.
So, Brian, weigh in on that. And then, Jason, I'd love to have your thoughts as well.
Well, what I would like to know is what Scott Bessent means by de-escalation, because that could be part of addressing the issue that Dagan's raising. He said we're not going to get a big deal. I believe that. It's going to take a long time to get a big permanent deal. But I think what a lot of small businesses are asking for, not just small, medium, all-size businesses, and this is what the automakers said too, they want a ramp. They want some kind of timetable where they can feasibly, realistically adjust to this. You saw that a little bit with the automakers. Obviously, the exclusion on smartphones and other things was a kind of ramp for Apple. Small businesses want that too. I actually don't think if you gave them a timetable and said, we want to make these moves, you're going to need to adjust. Here's how long we're going to give you to do it. And it's reasonable. I think they could do it because to the point of the email you read, a lot of the folks who are struggling under the tariffs also support the president. They like the long-term objective. What they're asking for is a pathway that can work for them and their business. So look, I don't think we're going to get a lot of news coming out of Saturday and Sunday from Bessent, but I do hope one thing we get from China from our side is a pathway that says the goal remains the same. Here's how we're going to help American businesses get there. But make no mistake, it's manufacturing in America that we're aiming for, and people have time to adjust to that, and they have the ability to adjust to
Some manufacturing, not all. Scott Bessent said it last night. It's not going to be textiles and some clothing and sneakers. It's going to be advanced manufacturing like semiconductors, things that are important to our national security. And to finish this off, it would be nice to show slight movement toward talks or a resolution this week. Well, with China, that ain't happening. The tariffs should be rolled back for a period like all other countries, at least give companies an opportunity to prepare for the inevitable rather than sweeping the rug out from under them. America. That is not America first.
As someone who served in Congress, what is the sort of short-term plan to help businesses through the long-term goals that many of them are trying to get to?
Oh, you think Congress is going to come do something important? You have to, come on, they're a bunch of idiots. So do you think they move? I mean, they just don't move in fast, right? Look, Donald Trump is going to set the pace here. I do think there has to be a glide path for companies large and small who make the commitment, say, we understand you, Mr. President, but we can't turn this light switch on and off with, in a week's time.
Right.
And so if we make that glide path, can you do it with some sort of tax credit or something? There's got to be somebody who makes this commitment, I don't care how big or how small they are, to say, we're going to make the transition, we got to have a glide path, and we can't suffer. We need something to do there. I think the president needs to be very cognizant of that, and I'm sure he's thinking about it.
I don't see why that couldn't actually happen. I mean, I know things want to move slow, but it's possible the president could give Scott Bessent a remit at this weekend's meeting and say, look, if you have good faith conversations, let's do something a la the 90-day pause. It doesn't have to be that. It's possible to do that in the very short term and say, this isn't the end of the negotiation, but it can help American businesses in the short term. That, to me, seems like it should be on the table. Whether it is another question. Right. It ought to be this weekend. These first talks matter.